Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into the smoggy cobblestone streets of Victorian England, where people whisper in candlelight clatter down gaslit corridors in their nightshirts, and yes, quietly tuck cold potatoes into their coat pockets before bed. You are not hallucinating. This is not a prank. This was real life. Picture this. You are pacing the floorboards of a creaky townhouse in 1874 London. The air smells faintly of soot and beef drippings. The clock chimes midnight. You have not slept properly in 3 nights. Your eyes are stinging, your nerves are frayed, and your last hope, oddly enough, is currently sitting in the pantry, nestled between a shriveled onion and a tin of sardines. A raw, cold, ordinary potato. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you are watching from. I love seeing how global this weird little corner of the internet has become. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with noise, not digital noise or YouTube ads, just the relentless, mechanical chaos of the Industrial Revolution. You trudge past factories that roar day and night, their belching chimneys never sleeping. Coal dust clings to your collar, and your ears ring with the clatter of carriages and iron horses. In this era, rest is not sacred. It is suspicious. It is often seen as lazy. If you are not working, you are wasting time. And so, people work. They work until their hands blister and their minds buzz like faulty gaslights. Yet when night finally falls, you find that the body rebels. Sleep does not come on command, and Victorian beds are not the plush, memory foam sanctuaries we know today. They are stiff, uneven contraptions stuffed with horsehair or hay, tucked under drafty windows. Your sheets itch, your back aches. The fireplace has long gone cold. You pull your dressing gown tighter, listening to the faint whistle of wind through the chimney and the occasional groan of the wooden frame beneath you. Someone in the next room coughs, a deep, wet cough that never quite stops. You lie still and wait for sleep. It does not come. So, you do what any sensible, desperate person might do. You reach for a potato. Now, this is not some culinary midnight craving. This potato has a purpose. In this world, the line between medical advice and folklore is paper thin. The same doctor who prescribed arsenic for your acne might also tell you to sew a crushed garlic clove into your pillowcase, or carry a lump of coal for courage. But the potato, oddly enough, becomes a star player in the sleep game. Not mashed, not cooked. Cold, raw, solid. Ideally, you place it in your left pocket as you ready for bed. Some recommend gently whispering your anxieties to it, letting the potato absorb them like a spongy confidant. The reasons? Numerous. None especially scientific. Some claim the coolness grounds the nervous system. Others believe it absorbs negative humors from your body. And a few say it helps discharge the evil static that builds up under woolen sheets and tight corsets. Historians still argue whether the potato trick began as a genuine folk remedy or a kind of placebo with cultural staying power. But either way, once it catches on, People take it seriously. You are not alone in this ritual. In fact, you might find that across town, a widow in mourning has just slipped a pair of Yukon Golds into her stockings before bed. A tired seamstress has one nestled beside her nightcap. Even Charles Dickens is rumored to have slept with various charms and curiosities under his pillow, though no confirmed potatoes, sorry. The deeper you go into this world, the more surreal it becomes. You start noticing the sheer oddness of what people do when they cannot sleep. One neighbor burns dried rosemary. Another pins a hedgehog's foot to the bedpost. And you? You hold your potato like a lifeline. Because here's the thing. Insomnia back then is not a private struggle. It is a moral one. You toss and turn too much. People start to wonder, is it guilt? Madness? Spirits? Your sleeplessness becomes everyone's business. And so, you try to solve it quietly, without raising eyebrows. You visit the market and inspect the produce like a thief, searching for one particularly firm, unblemished spud. You do not speak of it. You just place it in your coat and pretend you are not slowly unraveling inside. As the nights wear on, you develop a rhythm, a pattern. You bathe your feet in mustard water. You read the Psalms out loud in a whisper. And of course, you keep your potato cold, always cold. A warm potato loses its magic. And strangely enough, sometimes it works. Maybe not because of the potato, but because of what it represents. Comfort, control, ritual. In a world spinning too fast, you find one thing that stays still. That potato becomes your anchor. And as you curl up tonight, imagining yourself on a thin straw mattress with a potato nestled safely in your dressing gown, you realize you have never been so oddly comforted. You wake to a soft rattle against the window pane. Rain. A London drizzle so fine it seeps through cracks and whispers into your dreams. Your potato, still cool, still faithful, sits snugly in your pocket like a tiny, lumpy guardian. But the sleep you finally stole last night is a rare luxury, not a given. You stretch, you yawn, and already your thoughts buzz with fatigue. Because, well, in Victorian times, even your waking hours conspire against rest. Step outside your tenement, and you feel it instantly. The world is a factory. Soot settles on your tongue. The streets thrum with constant motion. Horses clopping, newsboys yelling, hammers clanging against iron. The Industrial Revolution does not believe in silence. Your meals do not help either. Breakfast? Cold bread. Tea strong enough to wake the dead. Lunch? Salted meat and boiled vegetables, if you are lucky. And dinner? Likely something starchy and heavy that clogs the stomach and stirs the bowels. Doctors of the time blame poor digestion for a variety of ailments, including insomnia. And looking around, you begin to see why. Evenings are no escape. You light your gas lamp, but it hisses faintly all night, casting eerie shadows and a faint stink. There are no blackout curtains, no white noise machines, just gas, fog, and that omnipresent hum of gears spinning somewhere in the dark. Historians still argue whether the rise in sleep complaints during this era came from environmental changes or simply an increased cultural awareness of insomnia. Either way, the Victorians were certainly not imagining things, and they did try to adapt. For example, many middle-class homes redesigned their bedrooms with sleep hygiene in mind, though they would not call it that. Windows were cracked for airing. Beds were positioned northward for better magnetic flow. Some even consulted guides that claimed your feet should never face the door, lest your soul slip out too soon. You pass a row of these homes now, walking slowly in the cold, damp morning. Behind each shuttered window, someone wrestled with sleep the night before. Perhaps a banker counting coins instead of sheep. Perhaps a laundress lying awake, dreading the next batch of bloodied linens. And medicine? Oh, medicine tries. You visit the chemist and browse a dizzying array of tonics: laudanum liquid opium, chloral hydrate, cannabis tinctures. Most of these substances are prescribed casually, with zero warning labels and very fuzzy science. 1 sleepless night? Understandable. 3 in a row? Best try a half dose of morphine and see if it takes. You hold the brown glass bottle in your hand, its label smudged, its promises vague, but something holds you back. Maybe it is the newsboy's story you heard earlier, that his uncle took too much and now babbles to pigeons in the park. Maybe it is just the faint pulse of unease you feel when your fingertips graze the bottle's edge. So instead, you return home and do what generations have done before you. You reach into your coat and check your potato. Still cold, still firm, still absurd, but not to you, because the alternative is bleak. You remember the man who tore up his mattress in a frenzy after a week without rest, or the woman who claimed she could hear the clock ticking inside her own head. And perhaps the strangest part? They were not alone. Victorian asylums are full of people whose primary symptom is sleeplessness, diagnosed as nervous collapse, or melancholia, or simply hysteria. And this is where things get dark. You walk past a red brick building, its windows too small, its halls far too quiet. It is an asylum. Inside, patients lie strapped to narrow beds, while physicians debate whether to dunk them in cold water or spin them in chairs to induce unconsciousness. You shiver, not just from the rain, from the realization that insomnia back then was not just a nuisance. It was often a gateway to institutionalization. It does not help that the clocks are always ticking. Literally, in almost every Victorian room, a clock ticks with patient menace. Timekeeping is a virtue. Wasting hours is frowned upon. And not sleeping? Well, that is just shameful. So instead of confessing your insomnia, you disguise it. You lie when people ask. You learn to function on fumes. You scribble in your diary at 2 a.m., careful not to wake the neighbors. And slowly, you slip into the strange world of night walkers, those who roam the house in the dark, their slippers soft against creaky floorboards. You are not alone. Writers, painters, seamstresses, even royalty, all of them experience the same aching alertness when the world sleeps. Queen Victoria herself reportedly suffered long bouts of wakefulness after Albert's death. She would pace Windsor Castle in full black mourning dress, accompanied only by her servants and sorrow. But while the upper class had servants and libraries, and moonlit conservatories to roam through. You have your potato. You cradle it gently before bed, almost like a superstition. There is something grounding about its weight, something honest in its simplicity. It does not hum or tick or whisper promises. It just is. And when you lie back down, mattress lumping beneath you, you find that, somehow, you are not quite as jittery as before. The rain still falls. The gaslight still hisses. But your breath slows. Maybe it is the placebo effect. Maybe it is your body's last desperate trick. But maybe, just maybe, that cold potato knows something you do not. You are not the first to lie awake like this. Not by a long shot. Victorian insomnia, contrary to what the stiff portraits suggest, is everywhere. Behind the lace curtains, under the velvet quilts, in mansions and in slums, people are not sleeping. But you know what is strange? Almost no one is talking about it. Society is oddly quiet on the matter. The newspapers obsess over everything: railway expansions, morality scandals, tea prices, but they rarely mention sleepless nights. And when they do, it is usually cloaked in euphemism: delicate nerves, female vapors, restless disposition, as if sleep itself has turned into something shameful or worse, unpatriotic. Because in Victorian Britain, rest is not just about health, it is about character. If you sleep poorly, people suspect something deeper is wrong. Are you lazy? Dishonest? Diseased? There is an unspoken code. Good citizens sleep well. The rest, well, they must have brought it upon themselves. You know this because you have tried to explain it once or twice. A friend in the marketplace, a neighbor across the stairwell. I have not been sleeping, you admit. They blink. Awkward silence. Then try a hot bath or some prayer. Then they change the subject. You are left holding your raw potato in the pocket of your threadbare coat, suddenly aware that it might be less strange than admitting the truth. Historians still argue whether this silence was rooted in Victorian ideals of stoicism or simply the lack of scientific understanding. But what is clear is this: sleeplessness becomes deeply private, a quiet panic shared only in the margins, diary entries, whispered letters, doctors' ledgers coded in Latin. And in that silence, the rituals flourish. You begin to notice the little habits people pick up to fool their bodies into sleep. One woman reads the same 3 psalms every night. A widower in Kensington hangs bells above his bed, convinced the soft jingling distracts his brain. A boy down the lane recites the Latin names of flowers until his eyes blur. You try some of them. Some work. Most do not. But each night is a new experiment in desperation. Then, on one especially long night, you come across a small booklet at a street vendor's stall. Its title? The Divine Guide to Restful Sleep and Purity of Mind. It smells like pipe smoke and mildew. You open it. Inside are pages of dubious wisdom. Avoid spicy puddings after sunset. Never sleep facing east. Count backward from 400 in multiples of 7. And tucked toward the back, almost an afterthought, a cold, unpeeled potato carried close to the body may draw away sleepless humors. Replace weakly. You do not laugh. You nod grimly. because you already know. You are a week ahead of the booklet. It becomes a quiet badge of honor. You see another man on the omnibus pat his coat pocket absently and wonder, is it a potato? A similar affliction? A shared madness? Soon, you start noticing small signs around the city. A tiny ad in the back of a health journal. For sleeplessness, try the Irish cure. Cool potatoes, close to the chest. A joke in a serialized novel. Lady Emily always had her tuber tucked before bed. Even a song circulating among children. Tater in my coat / keeps the night afloat. The fringe becomes folk wisdom. The folk wisdom becomes whispered gospel. Of course, none of this reaches polite society in print. The elite medical journals do not mention potatoes. Not seriously, anyway. But the people who need sleep, really need it, do not care about citations. You remember visiting a cousin who lives just outside Bath. She serves you lukewarm tea and tells you she has not slept properly since childbirth. Her eyes are dark, her voice flat. But as she pours another cup, she leans in, lowers her voice, and confides, I keep one in my sleeve. Russet, never read. That is the thing about Victorian insomniacs. They are everywhere, but they do not scream it from the rooftops. They smile politely. They attend church. They run households. And when the lamps go out, they lie there, pocket potato and all, counting the minutes until dawn. You begin to understand that insomnia, in this world, is not an illness. It is a test, a long, slow, burning test of your discipline, your sanity, your civility. You are meant to endure it without complaint, to carry your fatigue like a gentleman carries a cane, dignified, discreet, never dragging. So you do, or at least you try. But some nights, when even your potato seems to lose its chill and the gaslight flickers like it knows your secrets, you start to question everything. Maybe it is not your fault. Maybe this world, so full of soot and noise and endless striving, is simply not built for peace. And when that thought crosses your mind, you hold your potato tighter, not because you expect it to work, but because it reminds you that you are not alone. Out there, behind the darkened windows and chattering chimneys, someone else is awake too, tossing, turning, telling themselves that tomorrow will be different. And maybe, just maybe, they are holding a potato too. You are awake again, third night in a row. Not the drifting, daydream sort of wakefulness, but the full-bodied pulse in your ears. I could recite the family tree backwards, kind of insomnia. You stare at the ceiling, which is stained in ways the wallpaper cannot quite cover. The candle has burned low. Somewhere, a mouse is chewing, and inside your mind, the churning never stops. You try not to blame yourself, but you know how this society works. In Victorian England, not sleeping well is more than just inconvenient. It is incriminating. There is something wrong with you, something shameful, something unvirtuous. You lie there, reviewing every bad habit like a priest before confession. Did you have too much tea? Was it the mutton? Did you forget your prayers? Was your dream last night too indulgent? Maybe you spent too long reading that French novel, you know, the one with ideas. Because here, in this tight-collared, stiff-lipped empire, Insomnia is often seen as a moral failure, a weakness of the soul, and you are not alone in thinking that. Clergy, physicians, even newspaper columnists subtly, or not so subtly, imply that sleeplessness stems from sin, a restless conscience, a failure to observe the natural order, too much pleasure, not enough repentance. You remember a sermon you once heard, St. Paul's maybe, the preacher's voice, like gravel poured through velvet, echoing across the pews. The wicked are like the troubled sea. They cannot rest. You sat upright then, very still, wondering if everyone around you could see your eye bags. Historians still argue whether this association of sleep with virtue was a religious inheritance or a social tool to enforce conformity. But either way, the pressure is enormous, especially if you are a woman. You see, men might be chastised for their insomnia, but women are pathologized. Doctors write lengthy treatises on female sleeplessness, blaming everything from reading novels to uterine displacement. Yes, you heard that right. Your womb is wandering, and therefore, so is your mind. Better take some mercury and lie down. You know someone like that, your cousin Marianne, the one who embroidered lace with the precision of a watchmaker. After her second child, she began to wander the house at night, as the family put it. She stared at wallpaper for hours, drank vinegar, refused to sleep without her rosary clasped to her chest. Eventually, they brought in Dr. Winslow, who said she was simply fraying. They gave her bromide powders and silence. And when that failed, they took her to a seaside sanatorium where women were taught to rest by doing nothing at all. You tried to visit her once. The nurse at the door said she was in a resting period. You think about her sometimes, if she too had a potato in her pocket as a small rebellion. And here you are, lying in your own bed, guilt washing over you like a second blanket. You try to slow your breathing. You recite the 10 Commandments backwards. You imagine a dark cave. You imagine being buried in one. Victorian advice literature is full of suggestions. They are equal parts poetic and oppressive. Think no sinful thoughts after sundown. Keep thy sheets starched and thy mind unwrinkled. Never let idle fancy fester past midnight. One guidebook even warns against sleeping too well, lest you become soft of spirit. So, to be clear, if you sleep too much, you are lazy. If you sleep too little, you are suspect. Welcome to the tightrope. It does not help that dreams are considered morally revealing. People keep dream journals, analyze visions. A man dreams of a rose garden, clearly repressed desires. A woman dreams of flying, probably delusional. You do not dream anymore. You are too tired to reach that far into sleep. You only drift, skim the surface, then snap back into gray reality, like a stone skipping across still water. And yet, there are some rebels, quiet ones, intellectuals and mystics who believe that insomnia is not a flaw, but a kind of awakening, that the night hours hold their own wisdom. You once read a pamphlet, badly printed, missing pages, by an unnamed author who called sleeplessness the hour of true clarity. It felt dangerous to even agree, but part of you does, because even now, as your body aches for rest, your mind is alive, sharp, humming like the city outside. You think strange thoughts, deep thoughts. You replay conversations from years ago. Imagine futures you will never live. And in a society where every moment is accounted for, where silence is rare, this stillness feels forbidden and sacred. So what do? You get out of bed, slowly, barefoot, floorboards cold. You do not light the candle, just feel your way through the dark. In the parlor, you retrieve your potato from the coat. It is still there, still grounding, still ridiculous. But now it feels like armor, because in a world where your sleeplessness is judged, punished, or ignored, this silly tuber is the only thing that does not blame you. It simply exists, like you, unrested, perhaps, but not undone. You press it to your palm, sit in the dark, and wait for morning, knowing full well that when the sun rises, you will smile, sip your bitter tea, and pretend you slept just fine. Because that is what you do. In Victorian England, you fake it. You iron your collars and suppress your yawns. You thank the doctor, swallow the laudanum, and nod politely when someone tells you sleep is a choice. You laugh inside, and you pocket your potato again. You are back in your room, candle light flickering, just enough to reveal the outline of your lace-curtained window. The city outside mutters its usual lullaby, drizzle on slate, the clatter of distant hooves, the sharp whistle of a train miles away. You do not bother climbing into bed yet. What would be the point? Instead, you turn to the rituals. Victorians loved rituals, especially the kind you could do alone, quietly, as the world slept. Because no one wanted to be the sort of person who struggled. That word was for paupers, or the mentally unfit, or women with too much imagination. So instead, you reach for your drawer of solutions, homegrown, homespun, handed down with all the mystery of sacred scripture. And tonight, your fingers brush a small sachet of dried parsley. Yes, parsley, the herb better known for garnishing soup, was also a go-to for fretful minds. Brew it into tea. Let it steep until bitter. Then sip it in the dark. Some swore it cooled the blood. Others believed it pacified the liver, which was apparently where your sorrows lived. Historians still argue whether these household recipes were inherited folk medicine or Victorian invention. Either way, they spread like wildfire through cramped kitchens and low-lit parlors. Everyone had something they believed in. You try the tea, it tastes like regret and boiled weeds, but oddly comforting, like sucking on a memory. Then you reach for your drawer's stranger offerings. Lavender, of course, still considered sleep's best friend. You rub a bit on your wrists. Somewhere in the house, someone sneezes. Not everyone shares your love of florals. Then there is the camphor ball, which you place near the window to clear bad humors, and the onion half wrapped in muslin, said to draw out illness. It now lives beside your chamber pot, quietly desiccating. But nothing competes with the charms. You inspect them like a jeweler, a tiny linen pouch filled with ash and salt, a small wooden cross strung on horsehair, a thimble of honey sealed in wax, and of course, the core player, your cold raw potato. Tonight, You hold it in your palm and imagine the nervous energy seeping into it, your frustration, your circular thoughts, your guilt for being awake when others sleep. It is your confidant now, and unlike your family, your doctor, or your clergyman, it asks no questions. You slide it into your pocket, always the left, never the right. That rule is rarely broken. Something about energy channels, or blood flow, or just tradition. Others do it too. You recall the grocer's wife who stitched small pockets inside her corset just for potatoes, or the schoolmaster who rubbed his down with vinegar first to keep it pure. One man, a postal clerk with a twitch in his eye, even insisted on carving the names of his enemies into his nightly spud. He said it drew the evil out. You do not go that far, but you do keep yours cool. You rotate them weekly. And yes, you once tried placing one under your pillow, but woke with a sore neck and a strange urge to garden. There are also rituals of sound. You tap the bedpost 3 times, not because you believe in ghosts although, but because it feels like punctuation, a period on the sentence of your waking life. You hum, low, quiet, a tune your grandmother used to sing. You do not remember the lyrics, only the shape of the melody. It fills the air with something tender, something just a bit less lonely. Some go further. You have heard of people placing copper pennies under their tongues, claiming the metallic chill sedated the tongue and slowed the mind. Others swore by warm ale and a drop of molasses. There is even one family, upper crust types, who reportedly paid a servant to read dry legal documents aloud until they nodded off. One clause about maritime tariffs, and it is lights out. You chuckle at that, then yawn. The tea, or the hour, is catching up to you. You lean back in your creaky chair, potato pocketed, head lolling slightly. This is not sleep, not quite, but it is close. A state between, like drifting in a fog where the pressure lifts just enough for you to breathe. And for a moment, just a moment, you believe it is working. The house is quiet. Your limbs are heavy. The potato presses gently against your hip. And for the first time in days, you feel tethered, softly grounded to something that is not noise or fear or expectation. Then, crack, a loud pop from the fireplace. Just a log shifting, but your heart leaps like a startled cat. You are awake again, eyes wide, potato displaced. You groan, reset. The charms are useless. The tea is weak. You are a ghost in your own home, wandering from remedy to remedy, like a moth trying to find the moon. But still, you persist, because in this world, sleep is not a given. It is a game, a ritual, a pursuit, and you are nothing if not devoted. You pour out the parsley tea, replace the onion, stroke the lavender into the air like a priest anointing a holy space. And once again, you press your hand against your left pocket. The potato is still there, still cold, still yours. Tonight, you do something bold. You decide to seek professional help. Not the neighbor with her boiled nettle broth, not your uncle who swears by vigorous prayer followed by 2 swigs of gin. No, you are going to see a doctor, a proper Victorian man of science. Your boots crunch along the gravel path outside his townhome office. It is lined with ivy, damp with fog. The brass plaque by the door reads, Dr. Silas Featherwick, physician and nerve specialist, member of the Royal College of Surgeons. You do not know what half of that means, but it sounds official, sounds trustworthy. The room you enter smells like varnish, tobacco, and something sour beneath it all, probably the leeches. Because yes, even in 1875, the leech jar still makes an appearance in every decent doctor's cabinet. Dr. Featherwick is small, brisk, and aggressively clean-shaven. He greets you without looking up. You are instructed to sit. He asks the usual questions. Appetite? Bowels? Any dark thoughts when gazing into your wash basin at night? That last one feels oddly specific. When you say, I cannot sleep, his eyebrows rise just a fraction. Ah, another one. He has seen plenty of your kind lately. Sleep seems to be slipping away from the masses, he says. Perhaps it is the railroads. Perhaps the gaslight, or maybe, he leans in, it is the speed of life itself. Too fast, too modern. The nerves are not designed for this. Historians still argue whether Victorian doctors genuinely believed in a nerve crisis or simply coined it to explain symptoms they could not treat. Either way, neurasthenia becomes a catch-all diagnosis for the tired, the twitchy, and the too sensitive. And so, Dr. Featherwick tells you your nerves are depleted. You are overwrought. Your cerebral fluids are overactive. Your spleen is possibly sluggish. He will test that with a poke later. His solutions? First, your bed must be turned to face west. The compass lies beside his stethoscope. He is quite serious. Second, he hands you a small brown bottle chloral hydrate. You are to take 1 teaspoon before dusk, never more. It may taste like sadness and metal, but it will knock you out. Third, and most peculiar of all, he suggests a cool organic object held to the core, ideally near the stomach or groin, to draw heat and stir the torpid energies downward. You blink. Slowly. He pauses, then adds, a potato works nicely. You stare. Not because it is surprising you already have one in your pocket, but because he said it out loud, officially, like it was common sense. You wonder how many other patients he has told this to. How many of them are sitting at home right now, clutching cold spuds to their rib cages, hoping science is real. He ushers you out with a handwritten schedule for sleep hygiene. No eating after sunset. No music in the evenings, unless it is string-based and minor key. Absolutely no French novels. And above all, no excitement. You nod. You thank him. You try not to imagine dousing him in parsley tea. You walk home slowly, the bottle of chloral bumping in your coat, the potato now feeling heavier. Not because it changed, because you did. Something about hearing a man with a brass plaque say the words aloud makes it all feel sanctioned. Back in your room, you do not touch the chloral. Not yet. You stare at the label and think of Mary Ann and the seaside asylum. Instead, you follow his non-chemical advice. You turn your bed. You avoid looking at the wallpaper pattern that always reminds you of your ex-fans. You hum a lullaby in D minor. You nestle the potato not in your pocket this time, but under your navel, wrapped in a clean cloth. You lie down, trying not to hope. That is the rule with Victorian cures. Never hope too hard. Hope leads to expectation. Expectation leads to disappointment. And disappointment leads to, well, back to Dr. Featherwick's couch. You listen to the silence. You count the rings of a distant bell. And slowly, very slowly, your mind quiets. It could be the bed. It could be the placement. Or maybe your spleen has finally stopped being torpid. Who knows? But something shifts. You are not fully asleep, but you are not awake either. You are drifting, just enough for your breath to fall into rhythm with the rain outside. Just enough for the weight of the potato to feel like an anchor, pulling you down, not into dreams, but into stillness. It is not magic, but it is something. And in a world where every remedy is part science, part superstition, and part sheer willpower, something is better than nothing. So tonight, you sleep beside a bottle of chloral hydrate and a cold, raw vegetable, and you choose the vegetable. Because science may be precise, but the potato, it is personal. Tonight, you look at the potato differently, not as a last resort, not as a silly superstition, but as something deeper, something almost mystical. Because once you start talking to people, quietly, discreetly, you discover the potato is not just a household oddity. It is part of a much bigger tapestry of belief, stitched together with whispers, folklore, and just enough strange logic to make you hesitate before laughing it off. You meet an old woman on your walk, Mrs. Greeley, who always smells like wet wood and rose water. She invites you in for weak tea and offers you a seat beside her fire. The room is cluttered with knitted shawls, porcelain figurines, and bowls of dried herbs hanging from nails in the beams. When the topic of sleep comes up, she leans in. "Potatoes," she says, tapping her temple. "They pull the noise right out of you. Not the noise you hear, the noise in here." She wraps her fingers gently against her forehead. You ask her why. She shrugs. "Earth things know how to rest. We forgot. That's why we don't." She is not alone in thinking this. Across the city, you begin to hear variations on the same idea. That potatoes ground you, not just electrically, but spiritually. But they draw off anxiety, the way copper pipes drain excess steam. Historians still argue whether these beliefs emerged organically from rural superstition or were revived by urban dwellers grasping at anything that felt natural in an age of soot and steel. Either way, the idea spreads. A cold living root, unwashed, untamed, as a sort of primal calm. You begin to hear stranger things. One woman swears she places a potato on each palm, like she is being weighed before judgment. Another claims if you write your name on it in ink and sleep with it beneath your left breast, it can keep away nightmares. Someone else believes the tuber must be Irish grown to work properly, and that English potatoes are spiritually bland. You do not laugh. Not anymore. Because something is happening in these nights. Something the official science of the age cannot quite explain. People feel haunted by their own wakefulness, like sleep is a train that left without them, and now they are stuck in some timeless station, cold and humming with dread. So they reach for symbols, and the potato, humble and unassuming, becomes a kind of totem. Even spiritualists take notice. You visit one, Miss Tolland, a medium with glassy eyes and fingers like crow feathers. Her parlor is filled with candle smoke and velvet drapes. She claims to speak to the dead. She also claims potatoes dull the veil. You blink. They dim the spiritual static, she says. That's why the dead avoid root cellars. You cannot tell if she is joking, but she shows you a small ritual. Place a potato in a black bag with crushed mint and iron filings. Keep it on your person during seances, and the voices will leave you alone. You ask if it helps with sleep. Sleep, she says, her eyes flicking up toward the gaslight, is a kind of seance, darling. We call the past to visit us, and sometimes it listens too well. You leave her parlor with mixed feelings and a black bag in your coat. At home, you consider the oddness of it all, that a vegetable known best for frying and mashing has become a companion to the restless, the grieving, the frightened. It begins to make sense in its own twisted way. The potato is of the earth. It is buried. It sleeps for months in darkness without protest. It is simple. It does not demand or flicker or tick. And in a society addicted to noise and performance, the potato is gloriously, defiantly still. You lie in bed that night, holding one in both hands. Cold, smooth, slightly damp. You feel absurd, but also not, because something about it feels anchoring. You imagine its roots curling down into the soil. You imagine your own restless thoughts sinking with it, slowly, like sediment, not gone, but grounded. You start to breathe deeper. Somewhere outside, a carriage rattles by a child coughs. The gaslight buzzes, but you feel quieter inside. Not sleepy, exactly, but no longer panicked by your wakefulness. It feels like a truce, a pause, a soft surrender. You remember something Mrs. Greeley said as you left her cottage. There's no shame in lying awake, long as you're lying down. Victorian England may judge insomnia, may wrap it in lace and shame and medical jargon. But here, in your bed, with this strange object in your hands, you start to believe that not sleeping does not make you broken. It just makes you human. And maybe, for tonight, that is enough. You wake, or rather, you rise from a night of half sleep that feels more like a long sigh. The potato is still there, faintly warm now, nestled beneath your pillow like an old companion that stayed the night. You rub your eyes, stretch your arms, and you begin to wonder who started all this. Because, as with most strange human behaviors, the potato cure had to begin somewhere. Someone, at some point, reached into a pantry, picked up a humble root vegetable, and thought, this'll do it. This will solve the infinite war in my head. So you begin to investigate. Not officially, of course. Victorian London has no sleepless archives or museum of bedside vegetables, but through whispers and scraps and the occasional eccentric pamphlet, you start to build a theory. It begins, perhaps, with the Irish. Potatoes were not just food there, they were survival. From the early 1700s through the 19th century, The potato became a staple for the rural poor, but famine, disease, and superstition swirled around it, turning it into something far more symbolic. There were folk cures for everything: boils, warts, arthritis, and yes, restlessness. One tale tells of burying a potato under your home to ward off night spirits. Another claims sleeping with a raw spud on your stomach cures wandering womb, which Victorian doctors borrowed from ancient Greeks without even blushing. You read an odd anecdote in a penny magazine. A lady of Shrewsbury, plagued by ghostly visions and terrible waking dreams, reported full recovery after tucking a cold potato beneath her corset nightly for a fortnight. You are not sure what is more disturbing, the story or the fact that it appeared in the domestic hints section, right between recipes for eel pie and tips for freshening linens. Then there is the diary of Reverend Miles Etherson, which you stumble upon in the dusty reading room of a church library. Among his sermons and parish notes are entries like, March 2nd, Mrs. P. again complains of night agitation, prescribed prayers, and a root vegetable compress. March 15th, confess to using potato myself. Unexpected relief. Will observe further. You snort. Even the clergy dabbled. The more you search, the clearer the picture becomes. The potato cure was not born in laboratories or royal courts. It was folk wisdom, passed from hand to hand, mother to daughter, stranger to stranger, quietly, earnestly, like a secret handshake among the sleepless. Even respected medical figures began flirting with the idea. In one letter you find published in The Lancet, though suspiciously unsigned, a doctor writes, there may be curious merit in the temperature and texture of the unpeeled tuber, which calms the agitated nerves much like the compresses favored by ancient physicians. Translation: we do not understand it, but hey, it might work. But then, why potatoes? Why not apples or parsnips or a soothing rock? You think about it. Potatoes retain cold well. They are dense, satisfying to hold. They are never sticky or fragile. And most importantly, they feel alive. Not quite animate, but not dead either. A potato is a sleeping thing, dormant, but pulsing quietly with potential. You find yourself staring at yours that afternoon, marveling at the way it does not ask anything from you. It does not beep. It does not ring. It does not smell like menthol or require boiling. It simply is a companion in your vigil. You begin to think of your potato not as a cure, but as a presence, like an old watchman who keeps an eye on the door while you close your own. One evening, you walk past a gathering at a private club, men in waistcoats, ladies in gowns, sipping sherry and discussing mesmerism. You overhear someone mention electrical sleep currents and magnetic somnambulism. Big words, shiny theories, but you just pat your pocket and keep walking because you know the truth. In a world of gaslight and pressure and unbearable noise, what people want most is stillness. They do not need a miracle. They need a small, cool object to carry their dread through the night. Something so simple that it slips past the busy mind and touches something softer. And so the potato lives on, passed quietly from sleepless hand to sleepless hand, wrapped in cloth or placed near the heart, resting in pockets like a prayer, not because it is perfect, not because it is proven, but because it helps, and that in this exhausted, ambitious, over-perfumed world is enough. You climb into bed, nestle the spud in its usual spot, close your eyes, and as your breath evens out, you feel a strange and unexpected peace. Not sleep, but something near it. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are just tired, and your potato understands. Tonight, something shifts in the air. You cannot say exactly what. The room looks the same. The city outside hums its usual lullaby of fog and hoofbeats, but there is a sense, subtle, electric, that things are beginning to turn, not toward sleep necessarily, but toward meaning. Because as your nightly rituals grow familiar, they also begin to feel purposeful, not like chores, but like ceremony. You take the potato from the drawer, inspect it. There is a soft blemish forming near the root end, a small bruise. You stroke your thumb across it, almost apologetically. This one has been with you for several days now. You feel a pang of guilt for considering its retirement, but all things must fade, even night watch potatoes. You select a new one from the bowl near your wash basin. Fresh, firm, earth still clinging to its skin. You do not wash it. That would feel disrespectful, somehow. It is meant to be raw, honest. Victorian thinkers were obsessed with honesty, or at least the appearance of it. But truthfully, their world was a layered one. Beneath the corsets and cravats, the polite nods and rigid etiquette, was an ocean of strange beliefs, half medicine, half mysticism. You remember reading about phrenology, the science of bumps on the skull. Entire careers built on tracing moral weakness with fingers and calipers, or the popularity of magnetized water, where a man in a cloak waved his hands over a basin and declared it infused with cosmic calm. Historians still argue whether these practices reflect sincere curiosity or elaborate performance. But what they reveal is this: even the most rational Victorians were deeply afraid of what they could not explain. And insomnia? Oh, insomnia was the final mystery. Doctors wrote pages, poets wept sonnets, spiritualists summoned spirits. But in the end, the one thing that worked, sometimes, on some nights, was the potato. Unassuming, stoic, earthborn. You begin to think of it as a kind of spiritual resistor, a natural object that slows the voltage of your thoughts, that absorbs, not cures, but softens the ache of being awake too long. You hold it while preparing for bed, not as a joke now, not even as a remedy, but as a symbol. You are tired, yes, but you are also part of something larger. There are others, countless others. You see it in glimpses during the day, a flash of starched white linen hiding something round in a jacket pocket, a servant girl adjusting her apron in such a way that the fabric bulges slightly at the hip, a gentleman exiting a pharmacy with a small, brown-stained paper bag held delicately like it contains an egg or a charm. You want to ask them, do you sleep? Do you hold the root close and hope, like I do? But you never do, because in this city, Secrets are best preserved in silence. You start writing about it. Not publicly, God forbid, but in your notebook, by candlelight. Small entries, observations, theories, potato thoughts. It sounds ridiculous, even as you write it, but somehow the act makes the room feel warmer. April 4th, slept 3 hours. Felt dream adjacent. Potato held at chest. April 5th, tried red variety. Too waxy. Less grounding. Will return to russet. April 7th, imagined potato whispering lullabies. Might be losing grip or finding it. You laugh to yourself, but the laughter feels light, not mocking. You are not crazy. You are simply adapting. In the newspapers, you read about industrial progress, looms speeding up, factories expanding, trains slicing time into smaller, crueler pieces. And then, in the back column, sandwiched between advertisements for hair tonics and coal scuttles, you spot a headline: Restless Nights Among the Moderns. Is the human frame meant for such living? You nearly spill your tea. Inside, the article flirts with the idea that insomnia is not failure, but fallout, that the world has sped up and the body cannot keep pace. That maybe, just maybe, it is not you that is broken. Maybe it is the age itself. You cut it out. Paste it into your notebook, right next to a sketch you made of your potato. It is a terrible drawing, but sincere. Later that night, you go for a walk. The air is crisp. A gaslight sputters. In a bakery window, a clerk dozes sitting up. You pass a bench where a man in a threadbare coat cradles something lumpy in his lap. He sees you looking, smiles, then quickly looks away. You smile too, saying nothing, but in that glance, you feel recognition, not of names or faces, but of condition. Sleeplessness is its own society, and tonight, as you lie back in your narrow bed, potato tucked against your ribs like a secret, you do not feel isolated. You feel inducted, not healed, but held. And that is a kind of rest too. You begin to notice the conversations shifting, and not just the poor, not just the overworked or underfed. The sleeplessness is creeping upward, into parlors where clocks tick too loudly, into ballrooms lit too brightly, into drawing rooms where the tea gets colder while wide eyes stare at nothing. You overhear two ladies at the haberdashery murmuring about night terrors and the potato cure. You pretend to examine buttons while you listen. One of them says, "I sleep with one in each sock now." The other nods sagely. "My sister bakes hers slightly first, just until warm." You blink. That is a new one. Historians still argue whether this kind of folk remedy adapted as it spread through class lines, or if the upper classes merely dressed it up with silk sachets and French terminology. But the truth is this: everyone is tired, and slowly that exhaustion becomes less shameful. Still not dinner party appropriate, perhaps, but at least no longer considered the mark of a moral rot. You see signs of it all around you. At a market stall, a vendor offers nightstones, smooth black rocks said to cool the heart. But next to them, a small basket of washed, polished spuds tied in lace. They sell faster than the stones. Even the newspapers begin catching on. One runs a satirical cartoon. A gentleman in nightcap and monocle, spooning with a potato in bed. The caption reads, Lord Spudley's final solution. You chuckle, of course. But part of you wonders how many of those who laughed cut out the cartoon and slipped it into a drawer next to their chamomile and their charms. Something is changing. The potato, once a secret, a last resort, a symbol of silent desperation, is becoming a shared experience, a quiet badge, a mutual understanding that says, I too have wandered the halls of sleeplessness. I too have tried reason, medicine, and prayer. And now, I too will try the root. It feels like the forming of a club, not an official one. No membership cards, but the signs are there. The slow nod, the hand on the pocket, the shared glance of two people passing on the street, both carrying something lumpy and cool, both pretending they are not. You receive a letter. It is from your cousin in Birmingham, Annabelle, who used to laugh at your nighttime nonsense. The envelope is thick. Inside is a folded page that smells faintly of lavender and old apples. She writes, I tried it. The potato. I know I once said it was idiotic. I was wrong. 3 nights now, with one by the small of my back. Not perfect sleep, but not the deep, endless waking either. I do not know what it is doing, but it is doing something. I've unclosed one I washed myself from our garden. Keep it close. You unfold the tissue paper, and there it is, round, speckled, slightly shriveled from the journey, but still whole. You hold it for a long time, letting its weight settle into your palm. It feels heavier than it should, as though it carries not just matter, but meaning. That night, you do something different. You do not hide the potato in your coat. You do not wrap it in cloth or tuck it under the mattress like a stolen relic. You place it plainly on your pillow before you. Stare at it. Acknowledge it. Help if you can. You whisper. And for once, you do not feel silly, because the more you learn, the more you see. This has always been about more than sleep. It is about coping, about reclaiming some small act of control in a world that demands so much and gives so little peace in return. The potato is not a miracle. It will not fix your worries about money or time or the aching grief tucked in the corners of your chest. But it is something real, something quiet, something that asks nothing from you except presence. You lie back, potato at your side like a sentry. You do not expect sleep. You simply wait for stillness. And eventually, it comes, not in waves, not in triumph, but in the way a room cools after a fire burns low, the way a thought releases when you stop chasing it. You begin to drift. You do not thank the potato, but you feel its cool form there, beside you, sharing the weight of the night. And you think, if this is all you ever get from it, it is enough. You have been sleeping, sometimes, not always, not perfectly, but enough to dream again, at least a little. Though your dreams are strange, potatoes that whisper in Latin, rooms that spin if you forget to turn your bed westward. Queen Victoria herself nodding solemnly as she tucks a tuber into her bonnet. You wake confused, but rested. You smile more now. Your skin looks less like antique parchment. People notice. They say, You seem different. You nod. You say, just sleeping better. You do not mention the potato in your pocket, still cool from your morning window ledge. And that is the thing. It is no longer just for nighttime. You carry it through the day now, tucked into your coat, resting against your ribs. A quiet, grounding weight like a stone in a riverbed. It keeps you from floating off into the clamor of carriages, into the shouts of the fishmongers, into the relentless tick of clocks that measure your worth in minutes. At first, it was just habit. Now it is comfort. Others are doing it too. You pass a baker wiping flour from her hands. She sees the edge of your linen pocket bulging slightly and gives you a knowing look, just a twitch of her mouth, the secret handshake of the sleepless. A schoolboy, red-cheeked and twitchy, reaches into his knapsack and takes out a tiny new potato, not to eat, just to hold. You watch as his hands settle, his shoulders loosen. It works. You begin to think of them as talismans, not charms for luck or love, but for endurance. Little chunks of earth we clutch like anchors in a world that keeps demanding more and more wakefulness. Historians still argue whether these practices reflected desperation or ingenuity, whether the potato became popular because of its properties or simply because it was there, available, cheap, humble. But the way people talk about them now, even in whispers, carries the tone of reverence. And then, one day, you hear of something new. A club. A real one. Not public, of course. Nothing in this city ever is. But it finds you through a note, slipped under your door in handwriting you recognize, but cannot place. Come Tuesday, 9th hour after dusk. Black door behind the cobblers. Bring your pocket companion. Speak no names. You hesitate, then laugh, then you go. Because of course you do. The building is narrow and grim, its windows blacked out with heavy drapery. The only sign is a crude carving of a half moon. You knock. The door creaks open. Inside, candles flicker. The room smells like damp stone and chamomile and potatoes. You are not the only one. There are 20, maybe 30 others, all sitting in mismatched chairs, all silent, each with a potato visible somewhere on their person, in hand, in lap, one in a teacup. No one speaks at first. Then someone stands, a woman in a green shawl, hair pinned tight. She says, softly, 3 weeks ago, I could not close my eyes without screaming inside. Now I sleep. Not long, not deeply, but I sleep. Another follows. A man with ink-stained fingers and a potato the size of a plum. Mine stays in my vest. I talk to it sometimes. Not mad, just polite. You smile. And then, somehow, it is your turn. You stand. Clear your throat. You say, I thought it was ridiculous at first. I only tried it because I had nothing else. But now, I do not even feel shame. I feel steadier, like I am not falling all the time. There are nods. One woman wipes her eyes. And just like that, the room becomes sacred. Not religious, but real. Because here are people just like you who have faced the great beast of the night and found not a sword, but a root vegetable. And somehow, that was enough. Someone brews tea. There is music, faint and unstructured, a harmonium with half the keys missing. It does not matter. You stay until midnight. When you leave, your potato is warm from your hand, and for the first time, you do not feel like someone with a strange secret. You feel like someone with a shared one. You walk home slowly, fog curling around your ankles like ribbon. The city is quieter than usual. Maybe it is just you. Maybe you are quieter. Back in your room, you place your potato on the pillow beside you. You whisper good night, and this time you mean it. The nights are gentler now. You do not fear them as you once did. That frantic edge, where sleep felt like a cliff you kept falling away from, has dulled. The hours may still stretch out sometimes, long and moonlit, but they no longer feel empty, because now they are filled with something quiet, something steady. You still follow your rituals, the candle, the tea, the humming, and of course, the potato. But now, it is not always the same one. You have a small collection, each with its own story, its own feel. The one Annabelle sent from Birmingham, still tucked safely in your drawer, a little shriveled, but full of sentimental power. The purple-skinned one you found in the market, firm and oddly calming, a round, golden tuber that reminds you of midsummer sunlight, your day potato, as you jokingly call it. They rest together in a velvet-lined box like precious stones. And sometimes, on nights when sleep does not come, but neither does panic, you switch them out mid-evening, not for science, not even for results, but because it makes you feel seen, like you are tending to yourself. Historians still argue whether this practice was more placebo than principle, whether the comfort came from belief, from repetition, or from some inexplicable energy transfer between human and root. But frankly, the historians can argue all they want. You know what you feel, and more importantly, what you do not feel anymore. You no longer feel ashamed. You walk through your days carrying this knowledge like a small lantern, that you are a person who has faced long nights, who once stood at the edge of madness whispering to a vegetable, and that somehow that absurdity became salvation. You visit Mrs. Greeley again. She greets you with her usual warm silence, and her trademark tea. Her hair is whiter now. Her hands shake a little more, but her eyes, sharp and quiet, miss nothing. She listens as you talk about the club, about the people, about how things are changing, slowly, quietly, but undeniably, how more and more the sleepless are stepping into the light, not to be cured, but to be understood. She nods. The world's too noisy, she says. Been that way a long time. You found something soft in it. Keep it close. She reaches beneath her chair and pulls out a cloth bundle. Inside is the largest potato you have ever seen, lumpy, ancient looking, with a faint spiral carved into its side. This one's for you, she says. Kept it near 20 years. Thought I'd need it in the end, but turns out I'm just tired enough now. No fear left. You carry it home like treasure. That night, you do not place it in your pocket or under your pillow. You place it at the foot of your bed like a sentry, like a promise. You lie back, arms folded over your stomach, breathing slow. And for once, you do not count your heartbeats. You do not bargain with the ceiling. You simply listen to the stillness. It is not silence. Not really. There is the creak of the rafters, the wind at the window, the faint rush of blood behind your eyes. But there is no fear in it, only presence. You think of others like you, in rooms across the city, across the country, holding their own quiet rituals, maybe sipping terrible parsley tea, maybe muttering to a lump of earth in their bedsheets, maybe just lying still, trusting that stillness counts. And you know, you are not alone. The thought lands like a warm stone in your chest. You sleep that night, not deeply, not dreamlessly, but enough to remember the strange dream where you opened a cupboard and found rows of potatoes, each carved with a word: hope, mercy, sleep, sleep, sleep. Enough to wake with your body relaxed, your mind intact. You rise, make tea, pick up the old, spiral-marked potato and whisper, "Thank you," with a half smile. It does not answer, but it does not need to, because the ritual is enough, the quiet is enough, the trying is enough. And in this world, where everything moves so fast and demands so much, you have found something that asks for nothing but your hand. You notice it on your morning walks now, subtle signs of change. In windowsills, along alley stoops, nestled among flower boxes, you spot them. Potatoes, small ones, large ones, even one arranged in a tiny velvet-lined bowl, like a pet curled up for sleep. Sometimes they are plain, sometimes tied with ribbon, sometimes just left to sit in the light. At first, you think it is coincidence, then pattern, then something closer to quiet rebellion. Because for all the brass and gears of the industrial age, for all the sermons on rationality and improvement and sleepless ambition, there is now this, a soft, earthy counterweight, a pause in vegetable form, a modest reminder that stillness, too, is holy. You are not the only one who notices. The papers begin printing letters to the editor, anonymously signed, of course. To the Morning Herald, is it true that potatoes beneath the bed can calm the nerves? My mother swears by it, though my father insists it is only useful for soup. I ask not in jest, but in nightly desperation. Another, more poetic, I place mine near the spine. It cools the ache, and I sleep, not like the dead, but like the soil itself, turned, breathing, quiet. There is pushback, too. Medical men publish opinion pieces condemning the growing cult of root superstition. One claims it is a peasant's habit dressed up in parlor silk. Another warns of psychological contagion and regressive sleep folklore undermining the progress of science. Historians still argue whether this resistance was rooted in concern or professional envy. But you know what they forget? People do not turn to potatoes because they are fashionable. They turn to them because nothing else worked. You hear stories. A maid who had not slept for months until she tucked a red potato in her stocking. A widow who stopped hallucinating her dead husband's voice only after cradling a cold spud to her chest each night. A constable who kept one under his cap to keep the noise down. You do not ask what noise. You begin recording the stories, not just in your notebook now, but in letters, small pamphlets, shared hand to hand, like recipes for peace. You do not sign them. You do not charge, but you include a line on the back. For those who lie awake, you are not alone. Hold something living. Let it hold you back. You never know how many are read, but sometimes, as you walk through the city's quiet pockets, the alleys, the rooftops, the gardens you are not supposed to know about, you spot your line chalked faintly on a wall or tucked into the edge of a window pane. It is spreading, and more than that, it is comforting people, not curing them, not snapping them into perfect REM cycles, but helping them feel less strange. And for the sleepless, that is everything. You attend the club again. The group is larger now. Someone's brought a guest from across the channel, a Parisian woman who says the nights in her city are just as long, just as loud. She swears by boiled chestnuts instead, but agrees the principle is the same. You hold the earth to remember you belong to it. There is laughter that night, even some music. Someone reads a story aloud, something dreamy and slow. No one expects sleep, but no one fears wakefulness either. Later, you walk home under a sky so cloudy it looks like someone tried to erase the stars with a damp rag. The air smells like coal smoke and spring mud. You breathe in deep. You are learning that peace does not always look like silence. Sometimes it is just being heard, even if the one listening is a root vegetable. Back in your room, you light a candle and open your drawer. You choose your softest potato, the one with a tiny bump that fits your palm like a puzzle piece. You lie back, hold it to your ribs, breathe, and as you drift, not into perfect sleep, but into restfulness, you think about how absurd it would have seemed a year ago that this thing, this humble, knobbly, sometimes sprouting thing, could bring such calm. But absurdity has always walked hand in hand with truth, and tonight, you let it guide you softly into the dark. It is not a trend anymore. It is not a secret, or a curiosity, or even a punchline. It is a part of life now, the way some people carry rosaries, and others wear lockets with hair tucked inside. In this strange, gaslit world of sleeplessness and soot, the potato has found its place, not only beside your ribs, but in the shared language of survival. You see them everywhere, not shouted from rooftops or painted on signs, but quietly, deliberately. At a funeral, you spot one placed gently in the coffin beside a sleeping infant. At a wedding, a bride clutches one in her pocket, next to a dried sprig of rosemary. In a classroom, a child uses one as a paperweight and smiles too knowingly when you make eye contact. No one needs to explain it anymore. It is just understood. The world never stopped being loud, but now more and more people are learning to carry quiet with them. Even if that quiet weighs 6 ounces and smells faintly of cellar dust, you begin to write again. A longer piece this time. Not a diary, not a leaflet, a story about a woman who cannot sleep and a potato that stays cold even after days in the sun. A fable, almost, soft-edged, strange, true. You write it in the evenings, longhand, by lamplight. And when it is done, you leave a copy anonymously at the door of the club. A week later, someone reads it aloud. No one claps, but they listen deeply. You see it in the stillness of their fingers, the gentle breath holding, the way one man presses his thumb into the soft skin of the spud in his lap, like it is a button that might open a door. After the reading, you step out into the night. It is raining lightly, but you do not run. You just walk. Let it soak you. Your potato warms in your pocket. You wonder if it minds the damp. There is something comforting about knowing the world will go on being ridiculous, loud, strange, bright in all the wrong places, and still, people like you will hold fast to something steady, something quiet. Historians still argue whether this era marked a return to superstition or a rebellion against modern speed, whether the potato became a vessel for meaning, or if it was always waiting for the moment to rise from side dish to symbol. But historians miss the point, because it was never about believing in the potato. It was about believing while holding one, which is different. The potato asks nothing of you. It does not glitter, it does not hum. It simply is a lump of sleep-shaped earth you can hold when your own body refuses to hold still. You start keeping extras in your coat, not for you, for others. Sometimes you give one away to a stranger on the train, to a weeping woman near the market, to a clerk who cannot stop blinking. You do not explain. You just place it in their hand and nod. No one refuses. You visit Mrs. Greeley again. She is slower now, thinner, but her eyes are the same. She tells you she has been dreaming of roots, endless ones, deep in the soil, warm and whispering. You sit with her until the fire burns low. Say nothing, just listen. When you leave, she presses something into your palm. Another potato, smaller than before, carved with a single word, stay. You carry it home in both hands like a promise. Later, you lie down, light off, potato warm, and you feel it again. Not sleep, exactly, but its kinder cousin, peace. The city will continue. The clocks will tick. The skies will smoke. But for now, for tonight, you are held. And for you, and for many, that is enough. The days grow longer. The sun lingers on your windowsill now, casting sleepy golden squares that stretch well into evening. The air smells of thawed earth, wood smoke, and something softer, like old books warmed by sun. You sit beside the window with your notebook, the potato from Mrs. Greeley cradled gently in your lap. And for the first time in a very long time, you do not dread the night. Sleep still comes and goes. It is never easy, never guaranteed, but it no longer feels like a battle, more like a slow dance. Some nights, your feet step in rhythm. Some nights, you sit out and sway on the sidelines, watching others dream, and that is all right. You have learned that rest is not always unconsciousness. Sometimes it is just the absence of fear, the soft click of your mind shifting into quiet, the warm weight of a tuber beside your ribs, a private ritual with no expectations. Others have found their own versions. At the club, you meet a man who bakes his potato before bed, claiming the scent reminds him of home. A teenager who paints faces on hers and names them after constellations. a stoic widow who places one each night in a shallow dish of salt and says, "That's where I put my grief now. It fits there." The room is quieter these days, fewer stories, more pauses, but the silence does not feel awkward. It feels earned. There is no shame anymore. In shops, you spot cloth pouches labeled for comfort root. In journals, you read passing mentions of tuberous companions. Even an etiquette column subtly suggests earth holding as a method for improving sleep posture. No one laughs. You smile when you see it, because once, not long ago, you were one of the first, huddled in the dark, listening to the night breathe, clutching a cold thing that made no promises. And now look, the city holds them close, quiet as prayer, familiar as breath. Historians still argue whether the Victorian potato sleep movement had any real merit. They bicker over records, over scientific theories, or the lack thereof. They search for empirical data, measurable change, but they do not measure the right things. They do not count the whispered good nights to a lump of dirt, the exhaled sighs as small weights settle in linen pockets, the feeling, however fleeting, that you are not mad and not alone. You write again that night. One last note, folded neatly and placed under a stone at the black door behind the cobblers. We began as shadows pacing the edge of sleep. We end as people who do not fear the dark. Carry your root, rest your chest, and when you cannot sleep, stay soft anyway. You leave without knocking. At home, your potato waits on the windowsill. You tuck it into the hollow of your neck as you lie back, feeling the familiar pressure settle over your collarbone. Your breath slows, and this time, sleep does not creep in like a thief. It arrives openly, a guest, finally welcomed. Now, let the pace slow. Let the words unspool like thread into soft nothing, the kind of silence that hums, low and kind. You are safe now. You are wrapped in the hush of earth and sky. No ticking, no shouting, just your own breath, and perhaps the imagined weight of something cool and round resting gently in your palm. This moment is yours. The world outside still spins. It hurries. It worries. It clanks and barks and flashes with impossible speed. But here within the small stillness you have carved out, beneath your blankets, behind your closed eyes, none of that matters. You are not failing for feeling tired. You are not weak for needing rituals. You are simply human. And you, like all the others who have walked through long nights before you, deserve kindness, not only from others, but from yourself. So settle in. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let your thoughts soften at the edges. You have carried enough today. There is nothing else to solve tonight. Nothing else to prove. Let your breath do what it does. Let your bones remember how to sink. Let the quiet hold you the way the earth holds seed. If your potato is near, let it be near. If not, imagine it. Still, silent, small, keeping company with your dreams. You are safe. You are soft. You are not alone. Sleep or do not sleep. Both are okay. The night will carry you gently either way. Good night.